Hello, and I hope this season finds you well. Here at South Rock, we have begun a new season by looking at miraculous births in the Bible. If you missed last weekend or did not listen to the sermon, I encourage you to hit pause and search South Rock's page to hear what Andy taught us concerning the birth of Isaac. Now, I can't help it. Every year during Christmas season, my memory tank begins to get used. I start thinking of Christmases past, and I begin to notice a very weird thing. It seems that every Christmas I've ever experienced is some sort of Thomas Kincaid scene. The background is winter idyllic, the people are all laughing, we are warm in a snow-covered cabin, and the fireplace is roaring. Now, I assure you that I don't have a fireplace, and I certainly don't have a cabin that is perpetually covered in snow. And most of all, my Christmases past aren't always filled with people laughing. You see, the sense of nostalgia is a strong emotive pull that can drag us in so many directions. One recent study suggests that reminiscing on previous experiences, most notably during the holiday season, provides a sense of meaning and helps you move forward. Now, it's possible, though, that this type of recall becomes distorted, causing waywardness in our assessment of the present. Thus, I think of my Christmases past locked in a Thomas Kincaid painting, while my current season is anything but that. This same study also identified the consequences of excessive nostalgia or anticipatory nostalgia. Excessive nostalgia is memory's evil twin. It becomes this obsession with a distorted way of thinking of the past that actually robs you of the joy in the present. There becomes a mania of the way things ought to be in your head that you cannot appreciate what's happening right in front of you. Anticipation far outweighs reality to the point that nothing can live up to your expectations, and no experience will allow you to feel the way that you want. Even more, you begin to drain the people around you who begin to only stay around out of obligation. It is a real seasonal depressive state. Now, we've all been there in one way or another. Haven't you taken a trip, perhaps as a child, and had such a good time that you tried to replicate that same vacation, maybe with your own kids, only to be let down because the location changed or the amenities were different? Maybe you ate at a restaurant that was so good you had to take your friend to show them that you found the best restaurant in town, only to be let down because they didn't make their food up to the level you sold your friend on. See, there are so many ways that our minds get distorted, and the Christmas season seems to be a giant highlighter of all that deception. It is hard to look around at all the family pictures posted on social media and wonder why that's not my experience. The family games that get posted make it look like everyone is having the time of their lives, while every commercial is selling me an unrealistic, cozy fantasy that we could never live up to. Sometimes the Christmas season becomes dizzy, and many begin to wonder if God is working at all. I mean, is this Christmas thing real? Or is it just a really good idea? If you attended services at SRCC last week, something like this was mentioned when we took a peek at our first story from the series Miraculous Births. A long time ago, Isaac's birth certainly fit the bill as a miraculous birth since he was conceived and born to parents who were both nearly a century old. In Genesis 18:11, we read that, and I quote, "The way of women had ceased to be with Sarah." Wow, that's quite the description of someone's plot in life. Now, the news of Sarah conceiving and giving birth to a child was such a ludicrous announcement that the very next verse says that Sarah laughed to herself and then said, "After I am worn out and my husband is old, shall I have pleasure?" Well, the whole laughter situation is kind of interesting. When we read that Sarah laughed, it wasn't a funny ha-ha type of laugh. The word indicates a sarcastic tone behind what she thought was a ridiculous statement. In other words, how can she get pregnant when she's way past her time? Yet it's the question that God poses in verse 14 that is the most potent. He simply asks, "Is anything too hard for the Lord?" Maybe that's the question you should wrestle with this season. Is anything beyond the Lord? When you seem left alone or anxious for seasons past, does it outweigh the Lord? I believe that poet Henry Wadsworth Longfellow was able to describe the scene when the ideal is shattered by stark reality in his poem Christmas Bells. Before penning these stanzas in 1863, Longfellow's 19-year-old son Charles secretly left home and enlisted to fight in the Union forces. At the Battle of Mine Run, Charles was wounded when he was shot in the back. And on December 18th of that year, he stumbled into his father's house to begin the very long recovery back to health. Henry observed his son's pain and near-death experience, which filled him with tremendous anxiety. While all the world around Longfellow was singing of a godly peace, Henry's world was a sensational void. So that Christmas season, he penned these words. It was as if an earthquake rent the hearthstones of a continent, and made forlorn the households born of peace on earth, goodwill to men. And in despair I bowed my head. There is no peace on earth, I said, for hate is strong and mocks the song of peace on earth, goodwill to men. Then pealed the bells more loud and deep. God is not dead, nor doth he sleep. The wrong shall fail, the right prevail, with peace on earth, goodwill to men. See, the beauty of Advent is hope. May it be a reality for you that when you find yourself longing for experiences past or unrealistic expectations, that you settle your thoughts on the Lord, who is in the business of miraculous births. You would be reborn in spirit, knowing that indeed nothing is too complicated for God. Rest well in His divine presence, and we'll see you next week as we march onward in Advent and God's miraculous births.